Name and town, please.
Margaret Bennett, Franklin Lakes. It's time to do the right thing. Sitting quiet during streams of verbal diarrhea of nonsensical hypotheses is enabling our school system to be hijacked by three people who have grown increasingly comfortable lying at the board table and beyond it. The sole purpose of the unethical falsehoods is to foster distrust. Your enabling this has turned board meetings into a who's on first ricochet between three who have culled a destructive narrative intended to fuel conspiracy theories and a tangle of ethics violations trailing a wake of injured reputations of administrators, teachers, and the needs of our children. You took an oath to protect the schools. Enabling silence, your enabling silence, makes you party to the destruction. Your enabling has allowed one board member to drag our entire school system into a web of confusion spun around the main driver they're seeking, power, their mirror on the wall image of themselves as the God Almighty expert on everything. A board member called me last summer trying to convince me one of you had committed a criminal act, wanted that lie to get out to you. A board member walked into a town council office recently and told them that you were going to shut a school. The unethical pecking away at the integrity of our school system, claims of CRT repeatedly unfounded and unproven, rewriting and revising meeting minutes in what legal counsel called revisionist, superintendent working through illness yet skewered as MIA, just to name a few, red pen willy-nilly to policies in a reckless manner that should have you all vote a blanket no. You have enabled a drip of a destructive narrative whose plot has bled beyond this board table, and the plot is that they want people to think our system is broken and that only they possess the answers. In the wake are children who can't go to clubs. I guess they can now, but I do believe the other story partly, Mr. Rashika. Teachers who get booed, hatred after hatred spewed from this podium, the amount of homophobia spoken here in the last month. What do you say to that? You say, I am not going to enable this anymore.
Good evening. Name and town, please.
Ardith Cardenas, Franklin Lakes.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Ardith Cardenas from Franklin Lakes. I've actually been here for a month worth of meetings and I have not heard anything about homophobia, so I just wanted to put that out there. But I wanted to acknowledge that the board has already voted on the new curriculum, and we were all here for that. Part of that is what you call diversity inclusion, and we call it radical dogma and lies. You call it diversity inclusion because you realize that neo-Marxism would be a hard sell. Equity, on the other hand, sounds nice and cozy, sounds non-threatening, and is easily confused with the American principle of equality. But the distinction is vast, huge, and very, very important. Equality, the principle proclaimed in the Declaration of Independence, defended in our Civil War, and written into law in the 14th and 15th Amendment, is explicitly rejected by critical race theorists. To them, equality represents mere non-discrimination and provides camouflage for white supremacy and oppression. Equity, on the other hand, teaches the end of individual rights and hinders freedom of speech. These are replaced by group-based rights and active discrimination. It teaches that straight, white, English-speaking Christian students are members of the oppressor class and must atone for their privilege. And now you say you're just teaching diversity and inclusion. But what I find interesting that if Coca-Cola, one of the largest, most well-known companies in the world, can suggest white employees take training to be less white, the schools in our little flow community can certainly try to teach the children the same ignorant philosophy. Well, we, the people of the Flow community, will not allow you to divide our children by race and undo what Martin Luther King Jr. stood for when he prayed that we should all be judged by the content of our character rather than our skin color. We have been asleep at the wheel for far too long, but know this. We are now wide awake to the way that children are being taught to distrust and scorn each other, to look down upon each other, and we know that schools are a breeding ground for hatred masked by politically correct buzzwords. If you thought the parents and taxpayers would go away after you voted for the new curriculum, you're wrong. We will be watching you and our teachers. We will be listening to you and our teachers. We will have our ear to the ground for any signs of indoctrination for our children, and we've only just begun.
Thank you. Name and town, please.
Hello, my name is Alexia Colacortis from Franklin Lakes, and I'm a junior at Ramapo. My mother is Helen Colacortis on the board, however, I'm not speaking on her behalf. I think a lot of the concerns of the parents in our community are valid, and you all deserve to speak in regards to your children's education. However, I do not believe that our school's board meeting is the place to do so. These volunteer representatives do not deserve the harassment I have observed over the last couple of board meetings. They are looking in the best interest of us, the students of Ramapo and Indian Hills, and simply implementing the law. If you disagree or want to express your concerns about the law, then I think you should consider that on November 2nd when voting for the governor of New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Name and town, please.
Hi, Audrey Sanderson, Oakland.
What's your last name? I'm sorry.
Sanderson. I just had a question about the energy savings program. First, I was just curious. I know, Mrs. King, I know you're in charge of that committee. Did you invite Greg and Brian to present the information, or that's who you've been meeting with when you talked about your committee over the prior meetings?
Address just me.
Okay, sorry. Well, I just wondered how Greg and Brian ended up here tonight. And I wondered if we're definitely moving forward with this project. And I was also wondering how we came to that conclusion to move forward with the project. And also I wanted to know if the energy audit is going to be made available to the public. The other question I had was on E10, if you could explain further the Learning Acceleration School Year Program funded by the CRRSA and ESSER 2 grant effective for the 21-22 school year. I didn't know what that was and what's involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Name and town, please.
Hi, my name is Marianna Emlow, and I am a Wyckoff mom, and I'm running for the Ramapo Indian Hills Board of Education, the Wyckoff seat versus Mr. Kinney in this November's election. I would like to be the voice for other Wyckoff moms and dads, as well as all Flow District parents with any questions and or concerns they may have about their children's education. Flow parents are pleased to see the Special Education Program Summary and Review was finally published today under the RIH BOE News. It's been a month since the consulting firm presented the report, and many parents were waiting to read the report for themselves, including myself. The BOE hired Palestis Educational Consultants in 2019 for the purpose of examining the special education department at Ramapo Indian Hills to determine its strengths and weaknesses and make recommendations for program improvements. Unfortunately, the report was negative. Sadly, RIH is doing a poor job serving 20% of its student population. If we are a community that values inclusivity and equality of education, don't we have a responsibility to serve the needs of our special education students the best we possibly can? Our students' needs, our special needs student population continues to grow, so it's important that we do something about improving the department. They should have the same level of excellent education as any other RIH student, and they are clearly not being served properly according to the Palestis report. I guess these are good questions for Mr. Carolyn, who is the BOE Education Committee Chair, and Mr. Kinney, who I believe is the BOE Strategic Planning Committee Chair. What is the board going to do with the information from this report? What are you going to do to improve our special education department? Will improvements be made? Moving forward, will we be hiring teachers and/or aides in accordance with the recommendations in the report? Shouldn't we be very concerned about this report and put money into our special education department versus energy efficient lighting? Parents of special needs students would like to know if you could start implementing small changes now versus later. They've waited long enough. Please answer their questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joel Anch of Franklin Lakes. At the last Board of Ed meeting, John Carroll's apology about his poor behavior after the fact that the unwarranted, over-the-top curriculum was pushed through was not acceptable to me and many others. Just because the curriculum was the most transparent supposedly ever, it doesn't mean that it was transparent. Your statement how the state would take over if we didn't meet the mandates is untrue, being that we already met mandates without the extras that were pushed through. The last time the state took over schools was when there were riots in Newark. If there were any action taken, first there would have to be complaints filed. The state would have to eventually get around to coming in, looking at the curriculum and the thousands of extra pages, and that would all take a lot of time. If they found that we weren't meeting the mandates, they would try to get us into compliance by helping us with what we needed to do to comply. I'm glad to see that you finally recused yourself on vaccines, as well being that you work for a pharmaceutical company, but that was only after stiff public backlash. And it isn't just any pharmaceutical company that you work for, it's Pfizer. Over the last dozen years, you've been specifically involved with marketing. You should also recuse yourself from any masking talks as well. At the last Board of Ed meeting, to which Mr. Forger was not present, the teacher's letter of no confidence was read. It had stated that Mr. Forger put people in danger by her actions not to enforce masking. At that meeting, Tom Lamb, the attorney, Mr. Ashika, school security, Franklin Lakes Police, union reps, and lots of teachers were all present. There were also 20 to 30 people at that meeting with no masks. Concerning the letter said how dangerous it was that Mr. Forger supposedly did enforce masking, there was not one peep about how no one was wearing them at the meeting from anyone. I spoke to Bergen County Superintendent of Schools, Mr. DeLisio, in our conversation. He told me that it was not Mr. Forger's responsibility to enforce mask mandates. I then emailed Dr. Ashika and the Superintendent of Schools about the letter of no confidence that the union sent in and mentioned the same. In an email, I also said to Dr. Ashika that he should have put out a public statement clearing her name, meaning that this is not the case, and I feel it is his responsibility to do so. I told him that he should also send the union a letter that says they should send out a retraction of the no confidence letter based on that. So far, I've seen nothing. This is troubling, as I wonder Dr. Ashika is taking sides when he really shouldn't. I'm very disappointed that back to school night was canceled as well, and emailed Dr. Ashika the same. Virtual doesn't cut it. At this time, if any student wants to go virtual, they must be COVID positive, no exceptions. That should follow suit for back to school night as well, being that it is all under the same roof. Are you afraid of what parents might see posted around the schools and use this as an excuse to shut it down? I'd like to see the science behind your decision to cancel back to school night decide to cave into pressure from people. By the time I can get to school to experience everything, actually meet the teachers, I'll have a junior at Ramapo. I also don't want anybody to feel like I'm picking on them. Honestly, I really don't know many people here very well. I would love to get together and have drinks with many of you to get to know you better. I just really don't agree with a lot of the politics.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public